Well, with more political analysts predicting a future of coalition governments in all three spheres of South African politics, national, provincial and local, today on Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405, we've been taking a look at the state of some of those political parties who may be forced to work together. We've looked at the ANC, the DA, the EFF and the Freedom Front, plus also hearing from the Congress of the People that it suspended its president, Lukhanyo. For more, we're joined now in our studio by our Newzroom Afrika politics editor, Lukhanyo. Lukhanyo, good evening to you. It's interesting when you mention the political parties, right? You've got the ANC, the DA, the EFF, the Freedom Front, plus there are hardly parties that like working together. I don't know if voters want them to work together, and yet it's inevitable. This is how it's going to be.
It certainly seems inevitable, Stephen. I think the ANC losing power with each and every election, as we've seen over the last 28 years, means that ultimately we're going to get to a point where parties must then work together, come together to form governments, as what we have seen mostly on the local government sphere over the last 2 or 3 elections, local government elections. So it is inevitable. I think we will see it at a provincial level first before we, however, get to see it at a national level. But I think that is the future for South Africa.
People find that it's very easy to disrupt a coalition. It leads to more patronage. Some parties are almost explicit about it. The Patriotic Alliance says we'll go to whoever gives us a better deal for our people, for example. We've seen the EFF voting for the DA in some places, but now wanting some of those mayors removed. It can get incredibly complicated.
It will, and because we have to try and understand how coalition governments actually work. Remember, this is not part of our history. We've never had to figure this out before. It's not we don't have a frame of reference for how coalition governments work. So some parties, as you rightly point out, the Patriotic Alliance, it's about the deal that they can get out of a partnership with someone else. For instance, the Democratic Alliance understands that it has to give a little as well. So while in some cases it might say, look, we always want to retain the seat of the mayor, we want the mayoral chain, but we're happy to give you, the speaker or maybe a key MMC office. Whereas the Patriotic Alliance, for instance, would want to be the mayor, to say, if we are going to give you power in this, we at least want to share some of that power.
Interesting things happen. So the Congress of the People, I think, has won at the most 2 seats in Joburg. Now, there have been events today where they've suspended their president, Lukhanyo, which can then have an impact on a coalition if things are very finely balanced.
Yes. In some cases, look, the differences between what the ANC and the DA has could be 1 seat. So then you would need an organization like COPE that maybe has 2 seats. So if it then votes with the DA, it tips the balance in favor of the Democratic Alliance. However, when something like today's announcement happens, actually, while we're talking about that announcement, here's Dennis Bloem and what he had to say around the suspension of their president, Lukhanyo.
We want to make it very clear. It is not only because of ill health that Lukhanyo is being disciplined. No, it is because of what we are saying in the statement, the divisive role that Lukhanyo is playing now. I want people to understand, because ill health does not qualify you to be sidelined from anything. But when you are divisive in any organization, no organization will allow such behavior. That is the reason why we are saying that.
It's interesting. I mean, you watch what's happening there. That can have an impact. An internal ruction in a very small party can have a huge impact on what happens in the council.
Yes, sir. Particularly in the Johannesburg and in the Tshwane councils, it's going to have an impact because it's clear that there are divisions within COPE and there's no clear strategy as to what needs to happen going forward. I do think, however, that, them suspending Nisiwa Lekota, I do think that we are now finally seeing the beginning of the end for COPE. I don't think that they will be able to survive this, unfortunately.
Only now. One party that's had quite a lot of experience of being in different coalitions from at least 2006, relatively small party but a consistent constituency, is the Freedom Front Plus.
And they've managed to do that really, really well. And what we saw from the Freedom Front Plus is that not only are they able to work within coalitions and be able to help steer them and guide them and bring that experience obviously into the party itself, what we've also seen is that there has been growth within the party itself. For instance, in the last general elections, they took a considerable chunk of voters from the Democratic Alliance, which pushed them, considerably up in the National Assembly. I can't just get to those numbers.
100,000 votes.
Yeah, and that was very, very good for them. I know that you spoke to them a little bit earlier on, and this is what they've had to say, obviously, about the state of their organization and coalitions going forward.
I think it's a serious risk, and parties must take note of that, and they must make sure that that does not happen. For example, in the current coalition agreements that we've signed with all the different parties, one of the first points are very clear there, that there will be no some party-led coalition. I know that sometimes people would refer to the coalitions in the Gauteng, the metros, as being DA-led, and we all object to that very strongly because there's a provision that clearly states no coalition is led by anyone. We need to refer to them as multi-party coalition governments, and we obviously have those discussions quite often. But there are definitely risks that smaller parties may be absorbed, in the sense that if they don't defend their own identity and project their own identity, they may run that risk. So in the current agreements, we've gone a long way in that sense, and it's up to the parties. We remain different political parties that will compete. We are convinced that come 2024, we will still have the situation that no single party is going to be a majority from the opposition side, the current opposition side, and you'll be forced to have coalitions. And in that sense, you need to protect your power base, your electoral base, and make sure that you're not absorbed by a bigger party. We understand that very much.
So we've got coalitions now. There are a lot more to come. Are we learning any lessons?
Yeah. What we're learning pretty much is that there are some parties that are good working within coalitions, for instance, like the Freedom Front Plus, and they will grow from working in those coalitions because it shows that they are adaptive and that they put the interests of the party, of their voters first. And then there are some parties that are just in it for the power. And it's to what they can get from those, and whether or not those parties will be able to sustain, being in coalitions is for us to wait and see, unfortunately. But we are learning lessons as to who will thrive and who not.
Lukhanyo, Calata, our politics editor. Thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate it.